Happy Wednesday. It is Danielle Marie from the One Realty, the founder of the One Realty here in Austin, Texas, where we take a data-driven, all-in-one approach to real estate. Now, part of this data-driven real estate is that you can understand what is happening in the real estate market for my buyers and my sellers so that you know when it comes time to listing or to buying, how it matches up to what is happening in the macro and micro environment. So without further ado, we are going to talk about where we are as far as our active number of listings, our pending number of listings, our sales. We're going to also look at where we were for September. Where did we end up this year compared to where we were last year, compared to where we are year to date? And we're also going to hop in and we are going to go and look at where we are for October. If you are just joining me, feel free to subscribe. You can find me on YouTube at Austin Real Estate, as well as on X at _1_realty. But without further ado, I am going to hop in and I am going to share my screen. And we are going to talk about the Austin real estate market. So we're going to talk about where we are. So first and foremost, there has not been a significant increase in the number of listings hitting the market. You can see that 229. We're not drastically increasing the number of listings. We're also not drastically decreasing the number of listings, meaning sellers are holding out longer. So you can see our week over week decrease. We're at 32,000 or 3,200 listings, which is actually a significant amount for Austin. If we go back to years past, it's fairly high, and I think that's just because sellers realize it's taking longer to sell their houses. We're looking at the average days on the market. You're looking at least 2 to 3 months is what the average and median days to sell a house in Austin. Our price point. So if we look over week, because I track this data weekly. So if I go back here, I say weekly sometimes it's a little bit in between. But we're not seeing much drastic change in our average and our median price today. Earlier this summer, we were almost at like 1.4 million. It drops down because of luxury houses that disappear. But you're seeing this is kind of our average price point. We're just below 1.1. Our median is at 660,000. People are going, oh my gosh, Austin's not affordable. Look at this. At the same time, this does not mean what our final sale price is. And when we look down in a second and we look at those that are pending, and we're looking at those that are closed, it is going to be lower than that. So you can kind of take a look at those two numbers. The other thing that we're going to see is the number of listings with a price reduction. They've kind of hovered around this 60%, give or take 4 months. And I'm talking, when I say months and I've been tracking this, if I go all the way back, we hit 60%. So here, I'll pull it here. We hit 60% in June, which is really high. Typically, you don't see the increase until we started increasing. Actually, I can tell you the week that we started increasing the percentage of houses with a price reduction. We've just kind of stayed very, very, very high this year. Over 40% of the houses have always had a price reduction since the beginning of the year. So that being said, we're at 58%. It's a little lower than last week, but people are also taking their houses off the market that we're seeing as well. If you look at our average new price, median price, very same story, nothing to kind of get excited about. All we're seeing and to take note is sellers aren't drastically dropping their prices. Sellers are taking a little bit more time to sell their house. Now, that does not mean a seller won't accept a lower offer. I know for a fact sellers will accept what we call disrespectful offers, and we'll talk about that when we get down to our sales data. So if we take a look at our active listings, let's also look at our median hold, because this is showing me like, hey, are sellers drastically dropping their houses? Are they bringing them back on? What are they doing? So you're going to see that listings on hold 41, slight decrease from last week. We're seeing the days on market typically around 60 days. We're seeing this happen. People are withdrawing. We're going to see more withdrawals, especially as we head into November. We typically see right before the holiday season, you'll see them start dropping off probably like mid-November. But does not mean that the buyers aren't there, and we're going to talk about that. Expired listings as well. Not a lot of expired listings. People typically, I say 6-month, year-long listings, whatever it is, we're a lot of times seeing it really close to that November, December timeframe that we're going to happen. But overall, nothing alarming either way when it comes to what is active on the market, what's being taken off. Now, if we look at pending data, this is where I go, hey, Austin, this is good news for sellers. For buyers, it's not like bad news, but it's just, hey, like, just be aware. So you can see our pending week over week, we increased by 5. Okay. At first glance, you're like, okay, that's not a lot. But what that is telling me is that we're seeing some more buyers come out here. And you can see our new weekly number of pendings right here is 170. So from Wednesday of last week to Tuesday of this week, and I guarantee I'll pull numbers again tomorrow to kind of update my long-term sheet. It's probably going to be even a little bit higher because I bet that there are houses that went pending yesterday that they haven't been updated yet. So you're seeing that as 170. You're also seeing, when we talk about affordability, your average price point, it's kind of gone up and down slightly. No major changes. We're talking like just over 800 for our average, just under 600 for our median. No rapid changes with days on market. Now, this will significantly change if all of a sudden we see a rush of buyers and either they're buying up old property, we'll see it go up, or if new property comes on and they're taking them off immediately, meaning we see buyers that are out there that are just waiting for homes. And if that happens, if we see buyers that are waiting for homes and a home hits the market and they're taking it off, we're going to see this drop down. As far as price reductions, not surprised that 56% of the homes have price reductions that are pending, because that goes back to up to the fact that about 60% of the homes, give or take, were having price reductions. Now, here is where the pending data in Austin is very interesting. If we go back, I track pending data weekly. So if you can see this, I started tracking this last year. I can pull through the MLS and it will tell me the pending data. But what it also doesn't tell me is if people take their houses and they cancel on their contract, those numbers are going to go down. Whereas mine, I try to capture it exactly during that week and kind of look to see if anything that was pending went back on the market to really get an idea. So we're at 170 this week. And if you look at where we were, and that was Formula One weekend. So Formula One weekend in Austin is not typically a big buyer's weekend. Neither is ACL 1 or 2. We typically see kind of a pause from buyers. Last year, we were looking at 144, 147, 153 in October. Let's look at this year. So we are looking at 173, 168, and 170. So it might not seem that big of a difference, but when we're talking about 20 to 30, we're talking about like a 10% increase. Like that is substantial. So year over year, we're talking about a 10% increase in buyers. That also goes back to the fact that mortgage applications were up. They were up, if I could pull it up at one point, I think it was like 20% year over year. So we are seeing more buyers out there. I can tell you firsthand, I am talking to a lot more buyers. One reached out today, was like, hey, I'm serious this week. Like we've been talking for months. And this one said, hey, this week I'm getting a house. And that also goes to what is happening with interest rates. So if you look right here for interest rates, we can see that, hey, we're staying in this like low 6s. Right now today, we're at like a 6.17. I can pull that up and show you, but this is where we were. I always do where we are on Friday because I figure interest rates on Friday is kind of where the buyers are going into the weekend. But we're seeing more buyer activity this year than we were last year. So that's hey, sellers that are being patient, just keep an eye out on that. Buyers that are being patient, keep an eye on that. If you're looking at multiple properties and you have the ability to be flexible, great. If you're like, oh, there's a specific property, pay attention. Okay, if we go back to our weekly, we're going to look at what has closed in the past 30 days here in Austin. If you're just joining me, my name is Danielle Fountain. I'm the founder of the One Realty here in Austin, Texas. We take a data-driven, all-in-one approach to real estate. I'm big on numbers. I'm a numbers nerd. As well as when we get in the houses, we're kind of diving into the houses a little bit. So we are your program managers or analysts of real estate. We are not necessarily your realtor that just opens the door. With that being said, feel free to follow or subscribe, depending on if you're on YouTube, Instagram, X. But with that being said, where are we closed in the past 30 days? So 647, you see it's a drop down as 4. I bet we're going to see this number start to slightly go up. And that's only because we've been seeing this number go up. Now, it's not dramatic, but I think that we'll see it slightly go up. I'm not thinking we're going to be in the 7s, but we're going to pay attention. For average sales price and median sales price, median kind of dipped down, which makes sense because we're seeing some first-time buyer action, and they typically are at the lower price point. Our average sales price is slightly higher. Nothing saying that, hey, Austin is increasing in value or dramatically decreasing, but we're going to talk about that in a second. Because if you hang on, we're going to talk about where we were in September. We're going to talk about where we are currently in October, not only prices, but inventory, and we're going to look at month over month, year over year, and year to date. With that being said, I like to look at pending as a leading indicator. If your agent is focused solely on sold data, you're missing the point. You're about 30 to 45 days behind. You need to look at what is pending. So when we look at days on market right here, and we see we've gone down by 2, it's at 68 and 51. If I look up right here at what's pending, I'm expecting to see this one slightly go down and this one slightly go up. So just as a heads up there. My next favorite thing, especially when we start making offers, a lot of times in the very, very busy part of Austin, like when we are, houses are starting to move a lot, or if we're really slow, I want to see like, what is the market saying for this price point? It also helps when you are listing your house to understand, okay, the average house is going for 3% under. It's going for X% under. That is going to give you an idea that when you get offers in, how do these offers compare to my area? Now, I am talking Austin as a whole. We're not talking about that niche part of Austin that you were looking at. Every neighborhood, every zip code, every school district, it's going to change. So this is a big picture, macro environment. When we talk about your area, we are going to talk about your micro area. Where is your micro data coming from? So with this, we have closed price to list price. So it's closed price to what they're currently listed at. And then we have closed price to original list price. So that, or I say original list price before you had that price drop that brought it down. So original list price, closed price, then you have closed price to list price, what currently is there. So with that being said, houses are closing for about 3% under on average in the median for what they're being listed for. Now, depending on where you are, some of them are substantially lower. Some of them might be a little bit higher. Most of them, from what I've seen, most of the data, this is very, very in line. If we look at closed price to original list price, we're looking at between 7 and 8% under where a house was originally listed at in today's market. And so it's very, very important to understand when you get an offer coming in, even if you haven't had a price drop, depending on where that offer is, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, because it might be like 5% under what you're asking. But you need to understand what is that data telling you about the other offers that are coming into the properties around. If you are making an offer, use this information. When we make an offer, we're looking to see where have they accepted. And that's where it's going to come back to a disrespectful offer. And I learned this one rental at a time. Mike, he is phenomenal. And a disrespectful offer. Sometimes you'll go into a house and it's a little bit higher than you want to spend, or depending on how your negotiation. And we say, hey, my buyer really likes the house. We think it would be disrespectful not to write an offer. However, for this house to work for my buyer, here is the price point that they need to be at. Is this something your seller is open to? It's just a conversation starter. I can tell you, I see it on the MLS all the time. I see motivated sellers that they bring any offer. It says bring an offer. Why not just see? Okay, enough of that. We are going to hop into what I love. I love looking at our month over month data. So we're going to talk a little bit about September. I know we're almost at the end of October. It doesn't make sense. But typically we don't get the final sales data. I mean, it's still going to go on for the next couple of months. But we get a little bit more, I say by mid-September, end of September, or October, we really see what the prior month is. So if we hop into the monthly data, we'll start with September and then we'll get to October. So September was rough. Plain and simple, September was rough. Our number of pendings fell. There was a lot of things going on in the world. We're also talking about the fact that interest rates were a little bit higher in August. So I'm talking about August because August pendings are September sales. So what was happening in August, it's also the time that people are traveling, they're vacationing, kids aren't in school. That's all happening during this time. So if we look at where we were for September, and I'll zoom in, and I know some of my people that are on Instagram seeing it might be a little bit smaller, but we're looking at September. So we had 708 closing September. Great, that's a number. Without context, it means nothing. If we look at year over year, so last year we only had 574. So year over year, that's a 23.3%, or almost 24% increase year over year. So that's great. Our market was a little stronger than last year in September. Earlier this year, it was rough. If we look at historical sales, so historically our average was like, and our median was just around that 940 number. So we sold significantly less. We sold historically 24% less than kind of where our historical average is. So not great, better than last year, but still not great. There are buyers out there. And when I say historical, I'm saying all the way to 2005. So we definitely have increased our population since 2005, but it's not reflective in our sales. Now, if we're looking here, this is where it's nasty. This is like the red wedding, the bloodshed. You see our average sales price drop down, our median sales price drop down. Average sales price in Austin was 770, median was 847. You're seeing year over year significantly lower than last year. A lot of times in August when you're writing offers, it's sellers that need to sell before the end of the school year or before the end of the summer so they can move, and they're in different places and moves are happening in the summer. So some buyers took advantage of that. You can see overall the percent of closed price to list price, everything was not great. Now that was September of 24 compared to September of 25. If we look month over month, this is going to look at September compared, this is August's data. So this is August of this year where we're doing. The number of sales wasn't that much difference. It was only 19 fewer homes. So kind of in line, which was nice. But once again, we see this dramatic drop off. So we're seeing our month over month, we're seeing almost 10%, between like 7.5% and 10%, a decrease in the prices. Now, does not necessarily mean that the houses drop that much. It just means the houses that are selling, especially if you have some like investors, if you have a lot of investors coming back in, that are like, hey, I think Austin's bottomed out, I want to buy houses. You're going to see investors maybe buying at those lower price points, as well as first-time buyers buying at those lowest points. So that's going to bring it down. Our high-end luxury houses not selling the same as kind of this price point. Now, looking at all of this data, so our closed price to list price, very similar. But here's the kicker. I like to look at year to date. Where did we end in December compared to where we are? And right here for September, we're seeing our average and our median sales price just kind of plummet and drop off. What's interesting is our closed price to list price is actually higher. So it's kind of like, maybe it's just lower price homes that we're selling. Maybe it's not Austin as a whole. Maybe it's those lower price homes that we're selling. But let's go into October, because we saw price cuts in September. We saw our lowest, not price cuts, our lowest interest rate happened in September 16th. We got down to a 6.13%. We're hovering, we're just 0.04% above that today. But if we go into October, now these numbers are low. And that's because a lot of times we don't have the reported numbers. Agents don't report it right away. We are going to see until for probably another 3 weeks, this number right here is going to increase. Based on what I am seeing and what we did in September and what I'm seeing pending, I expect this to be in the low sevens. That's kind of where I see it. Maybe high sixes is a stretch, maybe high sixes slightly, or low sevens, right around that. So obviously, I think we're going to beat October of 24 where we were. If we look at where we are year over year, you can see very much in line of where we were overall as far as the days on market, our closed price to list price. We're actually 1% higher for our median closed price to original list price. And as far as our sales data, our average sales price is up 2.2%. Our median is down, which would make sense if we're still seeing some investors come back and they're buying those lower tier properties, as well as first-time home buyers. We're not seeing any dramatic high-end houses start to move that are going to shift our average up. If we look at month over month, this is where I say October is better than where we are in September. So our September under contract is our October sales. So our September with the lower interest rates is our October sales. And then you're going to see right here, don't pay attention to the number of houses sold, but you can see our sales price is up a little bit, our median's down month over month, but the rest of them, we're kind of in limbo in fluctuation. Because our prices did go up for our closeout in October, This right here isn't as bad. So we're seeing our median drop down by like 5.75%. Our average is 0.5% below where we were in December, which is very interesting because typically in December you're getting, it's going to be significantly lower. And we're seeing kind of all of that. Our algorithm as far as close price to list price, very, very, very much in line, which is surprising given we're in October. So with that being said, some takeaways, and feel free to leave a comment if you're watching this and you have any questions about the Austin real estate market, or also feel free to reach out to me. You can find me at www.theonerealty.com. You'll find all of my information. So, there it is, The One Realty, just make it.com. You'll find me. You'll also find me on Instagram at Danielle_Taylor_Fountain, or you can find me at _1_realty on X and at Austin Real Estate on YouTube. With that being said, if you have questions about your specific area and your micro market, please reach out, email me, text me. We can set up a time to talk, a Zoom call. We can dive into a lot of data because we're a non-disclosure state. I would love to post kind of my analysis that I do, or that initial meeting I do with clients, potential clients, but I can't do it because I can't show you all the sales data specific for your area without disclosing sales price. Now, the big takeaway is, one, we are seeing sellers hold out on their houses. We're seeing sellers keep their house on the market for longer. We've kind of stopped drastic price drops. They're kind of sitting kind of at the same. We're not seeing, and that's just because sellers are realizing it's taking longer to sell. We're seeing our days on market. You're seeing houses for the median, it's at 71 days, meaning it's taking you over 2 months. The median, the average is already over 3 months. That's just, it is a longer selling cycle. 2, pendings. We are seeing pendings go up. Buyers have started to kind of circle around, and I say come back a little bit more than we've expected. We're seeing buyers back a little bit more. And that also may have to do with the fact that our interest rates. And if I pull this up, Mortgage News Daily right here, and if we look at where we are for Mortgage News Daily, I'll pull up the 30-year and love this. We're gonna go 30-year, and this is for the past year. So you see right here, we're at the lowest. Besides this one point right here in September, we're kind of at the lowest for the year. Now, I also would be remiss if I did not mention, since we started tracking, I say big corporations have started tracking since 1971, so before I existed. Since 1971, the average interest rate is actually 7.7%. So we are below the average. So when we're talking about all these high interest rates, we're below it. Now, granted, house prices were nowhere near the same in comparison. So, and if we want to drop this back, and let's say if we want to go all the way to 23, you can see our dip right here. We have been up the whole time until if we go to like that September of last year, both Septembers that we saw a dip. My other caveat is a lot of times interest rates build in anticipation. So they're looking at the 10-year Treasury spread. They're looking to see kind of where we think interest rates might be going. The Fed is going to be speaking next week. Even if they're cutting rates next week, there is a high probability that I see it multiple times, that interest rates might kind of tick up a little bit next week after the Fed speaks. It's not necessarily, even if they're saying, hey, they're cutting rates or anything like that, it does not necessarily guarantee that rates are going to go down, even if they say it. A lot of times mortgage, they are, as I say, in anticipation. And so people buying 10-year Treasury note, and just to kind of pay attention with that. So with that, it's not doom and gloom for Austin. It's kind of stabilized. I'm not seeing dramatic drops in prices. So people are saying, oh my gosh, our prices continuously falling. Not necessarily, but the lower end price homes, they're getting bought up. So their months of supply, and that's a whole different conversation. We can look at months of supplies at the different price points in Austin. And that is going to give you an idea of not necessarily prices going down, but the buyers that are out there are buying at the lower price points. So with that, I'm Danielle Fountain, the founder of The One Realty here in Austin, Texas, where we take a data-driven, all-in-one approach to real estate. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. If you just want to kind of talk real estate, you're not looking to buy in the next year or so, still reach out. We can just have a conversation and set you on a strategic plan or understand what your plan would look like. If you're looking for a realtor, whether it's in Austin, Texas, or it's in another state, another city, reach out. I do have a network of really great agents that I typically refer out. So with that, have a wonderful Wednesday, and I will talk to y'all next week.